Hi, friends. Collin Sherwin alongside Seth Varnadore. This is the big one for the national championship, Alabama versus Ohio State. If you watch this every week, you've made money this year. You might not have made money last week because we certainly did not have Ohio State beating Clemson, much less beating them into the ground. That Clemson secondary, just awful. And with a first-round pick getting picked on basically the entire game.
Yeah, I think he may wish he would have stayed opted out after that game.
That game, I don't know how you could possibly think you're like NFL ready. That was an abomination. So we definitely got that one wrong, but I think we'll probably be able to adjust and factor it, even though I'm going to guess, and we try not to talk about this before we start. I tend to think that we're both going to end up with Alabama here, just on their offense. But that is my guess. We will get into it as we go here. Right now, it is at DraftKings Sportsbook. The spread is up to 9. It opened at 7 in some places. It is now at 9. Alabama has 64% of the cash and 62% of the bets at DraftKings Sportsbook. The total is 75.5. 63% of the cash and 60% of the handle is on the under. That actually opened at 77. I saw it kick up to 77.5 in a couple of places, and now it's come down to 75.5. Seth, these are two teams that can clearly score and score quickly and at will. We do expect a points battle here, but can anyone get a stop, and who's going to get more stops, I think is the question.
I don't know if either one's going to get a ton of stops. You can see, looking at the numbers here, Alabama's offense is unbelievable. Their available yards number is insane, 73.1%. Ohio State's isn't bad either. They're picking up almost 65% of available yards. But just to put the Alabama number into perspective, if you started I think the average starting field position, the kind of the going number is your 30-yard line. So basically on average, Alabama is driving to the 18-yard line every drive. So they're getting at least a field goal out of every drive because their kicker hasn't missed this year, which I'm sure won't come back to haunt them in this game. They've never had problems with kickers. But I mean, these are both, as you said, offense is great. I think the big difference here, and you see that Ohio State's offense isn't great in terms of yards per play, but they're pretty decent in other areas. But I think the big one in this game is going to be that explosiveness rate. They're 50th in the country in terms of explosiveness given up, where Alabama's 17th. And they're particularly bad against the pass, which Alabama, I mean, as we've all seen, they just had a receiver win the Heisman Trophy. You usually don't do that unless you have an explosive passing game. So usually don't do that at all, actually. But then in terms of the talent, Georgia's the only team that's more talented than these two. This is the top two teams in terms of talent in the playoff made the final. It's not a shocker. Recruiting does matter.
Do you think it would matter if Justin Fields was at Georgia instead of?
I think that's probably your difference. That's probably your difference, right? Like Georgia doesn't have a quarterback. If they had one, you saw. I don't even think JT Daniels is great. If you watch him against Cincinnati, he's not unbelievable, but he's good enough. And
I think Daniels he was a freshman and then he got hurt. I think he was going to make the jump. Then he took that brutal leg injury, and I still don't think he's mentally all the way back.
Yeah, I don't know. He just is not. He's not driving the ball down the field very, very well. He doesn't look like he doesn't look like Justin Fields. That's for sure. But so we'll start looking at. We have a little bit more film than normal since this is the only game we're talking about. We'll start looking at the Ohio State offense. They're a really good wide zone team, and this one here in particular is basically like a clinic tape on running the wide zone. This is about as perfect as you can run it. So when you get this, it's hard because they're going to displace you horizontally. So you see those guys that basically it looks like they're trying to run down the line, and then once the back gets a vertical seam, he can hit it. He didn't even have to do much here. They blocked it so well.
I was watching the game on the hanging camera on the Skycam, the whole thing. You could see the holes that Ohio State was opening up, especially from that angle. Sermon could have, you and I could have run for Sermon numbers. They were that wide. The holes were that big.
Yeah. And then so what do you have to do to stop the wide zone? So you got to start bringing extra bodies, right? Because Ohio State will get in a lot of stuff where they have tight ends, at least one tight end, sometimes two tight ends. So movement, bring a lot of bodies to the run game, right? So you commit bodies to the run game. right here early in the game. Commit bodies to the run game. You see safeties getting in the box. Here, same thing. You see the safety coming down to make a play. So then, all right. So then, what's the answer? So they have a couple of them. That's the problem for defenses. You want to just play that? Well, Fields can keep it. I'll be interested to see how much run game they do with him, because I think that's a place where they can get an edge after he took that shot. But also, you're going to bring safeties in. You're going to have safeties squat. Or we'll just take some shots over the top. If you notice, here's another one where they could have had either or. And then we got another one. If you notice, all these are off of play action. All these big shots down the field are off play action. So they get you got to come up and fit that run, and then they hit shots over the top. And then Fields, this is kind of the difference, right? And he hadn't been playing great before, but the placement in that throw right there. This is one that's off straight drop back. That's a tight window. There's the ball right there. Perfect throw. And then, so, what's the answer? Okay, well, maybe don't bring a bunch of guys in, rally and tackle. So let's not blitz. Let's drop back a little bit. Or we'll bring one guy, and now Fields is good enough, drop it off to the back. The offenses are actually pretty similar. Alabama and Ohio State, they're pretty similar. Alabama loves run wide zone too. They're both well designed. Here's a rollout. This is a great route by the receiver. Olave, he's a guy that I think is going to be an early draft pick, probably at least I think day 2 is what a lot of people think, second round. But here's a great route, great throw, and then so they get you. They have a lot of good counter punches. So they'll punch. So there's the rollout the play before. Now here they roll out, throw back. Everything's just really well designed. So what do I think Alabama's going to have to do to try to give them some problems? I think you have to bring pressure. Third down and long, Clemson brought some pressures, got there. Especially if after some of those shots Fields took in the last game, I think you want to bring pressure on him and see if you can hold up on the other end. They've got some speed at receiver, but bring pressure, move guys around. I don't know how. I saw that their sack rate is actually pretty high, surprisingly. And then you can bring that pressure will help clean up the boot stuff, and you could also clean up a little bit of the wide zone stuff with it. But if you bring a lot of pressure, you're probably not going to get a ton of stops either way, because Fields can sit back there and do stuff like this. You bring pressure, and the ball is thrown on this shoulder, the defensive back's on that shoulder. You just can't. You can't really beat that. But what you kind of hope is he gets locked on, because everything is so well designed. So this is basically, so traditionally you run white corners, air raid play. That's how it would be traditionally run. But basically they use motion. Everyone gets to the same spots. So here's your flat guy. There's your sit guy. Here's your corner guy. And this was one all week that probably the corner was open in practice. He threw it anyways, got a pick. First drive of the second half, which, the game was already seemed to be put away, but could have really put the nail in the coffin. So that's what you kind of got to hope. Here, Alabama did something similar against Notre Dame. This is one where they're going to motion the back out and then have him run like a sit here, and they're going to try to bring this tight end all the way across. And they have 4 to a side. So this is probably one that they thought, this is going to be good. It worked all week in practice. Book just says, all right, my tight end's going to get open. And then Alabama's linebacker covers him all the way across the field, step for step, easy interception. So this is Notre Dame actually gives you a pretty good look at how I think Alabama will play a little bit of Ohio State. Ohio State does like to go with 2 tight ends and one, a tight end a lot, and they'll run some wide zone stuff too. And so Alabama did a decent job handling it. This isn't wide zone, but this is a G play. It's hitting. That's another wide play. It's going to hit on the perimeter. You see they're bringing 2 guys off the perimeter. And so if it kind of pushing the run to those 2 guys, if it bounces and they can make a play on it. And then that also helps shut down one of the favorite things off the wide zone is the boot. So when you a lot of teams, you see the Rams run a ton of wide zone and there's a lot of boot off of it, right? That's that McVay, Shanahan thing. So that
Fields is going to have more success with that than Handbook is, though.
Yes. Fields is a better athlete, but still, as you saw before, Clemson got a guy in his face early on that boot, and he threw it out of bounds. So, you can make it. You just want to make it hard on him. I don't think you're not going to stop any of these teams. But one thing Alabama showed against what everyone thought is the best offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in college football. They can also sit back and just get pressure with these guys up front. So they'll move a little bit, but they can also just beat you straight up. And here's one. Here's another look here. Go empty. I'm just going to drop back. This is the first play of the game. This is well covered. So Notre Dame was trying to use this motion to get these guys really wide to fly out and then have him hit him on basically a stick route.
It's the freshman, right?
Yeah. But this guy played it perfectly. If Book throws it, you can see him kind of looking here. If he throws that, it's pick. So now he's got to readjust. And that's the first play of the game. He's got to scramble out. So they seem to be rounding into form a little bit defensively. Alabama does. And they'll move guys up front. Again, this is just getting pressure without having to bring a blitz. But one thing I thought, they didn't play perfect. I thought left a little bit to be desired is some zone read stuff. And this is a look you may get from Ohio State. You got 2 up top, a wing down here. How much are they going to run Fields, I think, is my big question. Because right here, they're kind of in trouble right there. And you see they get a decent gain out of it. And then this one, that's another one where if it's Fields as the runner, right here, he kind of beats the block. But if it's Fields as the runner, can he really play both? I don't think so. Now your corner's got to come and make a tackle, which they showed they could. But that would be one spot where I think maybe some of that stuff, Fields in the run game, could give them some problems. But after the shot he took, doesn't seem to be 100% healthy. So how much are they going to run him? I don't know.
You got to let hang out.
I think you got it right. Last game of the year, can't hold anything back. Dan Phelps,
right, and
famous
he's
words.
The 2nd or 3rd pick in the draft. So
yeah. So Ohio State, they obviously played really well on defense against Clemson. Clemson, I don't think isn't a scheme multiple as Alabama is, but you see them holding up here in the run game without having to bring pressure. Those are just their interior linemen holding up. They can get a pass rush, whether they bring guys or not here. They only bring 4, but you see that pass rush just gets there in a hurry. They've got talent. We talked about even last week that you could see the athleticism up front. You could see guys chasing down screens and big dudes moving, but they just hadn't really played that well during the season. So that kind of led you to think, all right, well, like you kind of got to see it, right? You got to see it again here. They bring a guy, gets the protection, but the pass rusher just gets there in a hurry. So they've got some guys that can rush a passer. Here it's the guy, they bump an end inside and he's able to win.
There's a lot of zone blitz concept out of that too, isn't it? It looks like they're dropping guys that
they do a really good one later. So right here, this is kind of or the other side of the pass rush. And this guy plays it, he's looking for some kind of counter or something coming back the other way off this. He sees there's not, so then he just continues the pass rush and just makes it easy pickings for a screen out there. Alabama loves to screen. They will screen you. So you have to be conscious of that. But here's one thing that I thought was really cool. So they play a ton of I didn't watch a ton of Ohio State this year. I watched a little bit, but according to coaches I've read, they like to play a ton of cover 3 and 3 deep. So right here, when this safety is down like this, the quarterback's thinking he's the deep safety. He's going to roll down and play hook curl or whatever. But they actually switch this, and it gives Lawrence some pause. He is actually going to look like he's rolled up. Now he's going to roll back. He'll come up, and then this end will actually drop back. And they're running, and this guy's too slow. If he's a little faster, they might have a chance. But this end actually drops back, and they rush there. So he basically replaces him. He drops back. Lawrence, it creates a really cloudy picture over there, and then you get off the field. It's right there. You see that? He shows. He's thinking at the snap, I'm going to get this right here, but then he sees that, and he's like, oh, crap, I can't throw that. Readjust. Sees the tight end gets open late, overthrows it because by then the pressure's gotten there. So interesting kind of little wrinkle on 3rd and long here by Ohio State. I think Clemson could have done some things better in terms of, this guy's taking too long to get to the flat, but really cool design. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to see. They play a lot of 3, they'll mix in some down the field. Everything turns into man coverage basically, and they'll play some man where this guy's going to make a play one-on-one. There's a win, but they had quite a few times I thought where they didn't necessarily get reflected in the stats. But Sean Wade, I believe is his name. He plays the boundary corner for them. He got beat a ton, and sometimes it's because he's bailing. And it's tough if you're going to press up and bail. But they played a lot of him press bail, and he got beat quite a few times man-to-man. So how are you going to play Alabama? Are you going to play them man-to-man? Well, then I think you're in trouble. Here,
he Smith, Jalen Waddle.
Yeah. Especially if Waddle's playing. That's going to be if he's playing now, it's different. And then, what are you going to have to do well against Alabama? You're going to have to tackle well on the perimeter because they really make you defend sideline to sideline. Here's a pretty good rep at it. There's a linebacker getting out there. It still picks up 8 yards, but that's a pretty good tackle on the perimeter. Here's not as good, right? And this isn't a bad player, but this isn't Devontae Smith or Waddle if he's back. And what does Devontae Smith look like running? Well, you're about to see right here. So here's Alabama. What are they going to do? First of all, they use the run game. And they'll if you don't match numbers outside, they'll test you on the perimeter. They'll use motion. One thing they do, it's seemingly every play, is they motion. They use a ton of pre-snap motion, all that kind of stuff to get information. There's another one. If you don't match numbers, we're just going to throw it out the perimeter, let him go. And he's won the Heisman Trophy for a reason. But they can also just kind of sit back and run the ball at you with what I think may be their best player in Najee Harris. And he's a guy. If you're looking at props, he was a guy I liked in the SEC championship game as the MVP. He's a guy I'd like here too. He's probably worth a prop, but he may be the 3rd guy on Alabama in terms of, odds. He may probably be like 3rd highest because I would imagine Mac Jones and Smith will be higher. But he's a freak of nature, and I think we're about to see that here for. So again, motion, run, and then you play it. Even you play it well, and then this happens. He hurdles you, and then run. Yeah, it's insane. It's unbelievable. They got this guy. So what are you going to do? That's what both these offenses. They run the ball well enough. It's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to load up the box and stop the run? Well, now we got a lot of guys that can win one-on-one and quarterback that can make the throws. Right here, it's just simple wide zone, just like Ohio State runs. He gets vertical, easy 15 yards. All right, so you come up to stop the run now. Now we do a ton of movement. So they got guys out here. They move them all in. Quarterback gets some information. Play action. To the Heisman Trophy winner. Goodbye.
Jeez.
It's really like that's what these guys have figured out. And then, all right, well, you're going to dedicate a lot of attention to Devontae Smith. Well, now we'll use play action, then use Devontae Smith as a decoy and get our tight end that also returns kicks for us. Like, what is that? Like, how this guy, I think he's listed as a tight end. He returns kicks. So, I mean, so they give you a ton of problems just with personnel, just not even just skill, but just, all right, I got to treat that guy as a tight end. So how do I play that? It's crazy. And then to top it all off, so they hit play action, they can hit drop back stuff. And then we'll do a little RPO here. And it's just,
I love this angle with the 3 yards downfield in the tackle box, like highlighted too. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't even realize that, but yeah. So there you go. Now you fit the. Now you gotta. So now you gotta play this. So now you gotta play the screen on the perimeter. So play the perimeter. Now play the counter, and now play the slant. It's basically it's triple option football, but instead of the pitch option being 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage, he's 7 yards downfield.
And he's the Heisman Trophy winner.
That's not even him. That's another guy. That's the other
that's
guy.
Not even Devontae?
Yeah, that's like the third center, the other guy. That's him. He's the other guy. That's Mechie. So, and then if you want to play him one-on-one, then they do have the Heisman winner, and you can get broke off at the goal line. So they're obviously a problem to defend, but Notre Dame did get pressure. Now, what Mac Jones does really well is he's a really good mental processor. So you'll see here, Notre Dame gets pressure. He gets out of it. They get away with a hold, but he understands, okay, where's my outlet? So he gets the ball out of his hands. And then here, they get pressure again, and they have a screen called, and Mac Jones again smartly just throws it into the ground. But these are plays in a highly competitive game. If you can get that pressure on him, that's their only deficiency. Right? He's not Trevor Lawrence. He's not Justin Fields. He's not a guy that's going to make something happen really out of the pocket. So if you pressure him, you can kind of keep him on his spot. Now, they do a good job moving around, moving the pocket and things like that, but he's not that guy that's going to escape and make a big play, I don't think. So Ohio State, I think you pressure him and see if he can handle that adversity, because he hasn't been touched a whole lot this year. So it should be a pretty good game, at least schematically. Both these defenses are going to have to do some different things. They're not going to be able to play super conventionally and stop these offenses.
I'm glad you mentioned Najee Harris, because I agree with you. I think he might be the best player. He ended up 5th in the Heisman voting, and I was disappointed for him, but I also understand why you can't put 3 players on the same unit. As 5 Heisman finalists. So
I think what's crazy it is, I think Mac Jones should have been the 3rd guy out of that group. It's just, he's great. He does a great job for what they asked him to do, but just in terms of I think they would miss, well, now that Waddle's gone, it may be Smith, but I think at the beginning of the year, the biggest drop off would have been between Harris and the next guy. The line is so good, it wouldn't have been unbelievable, but what he can do, I think he was their 2nd leading receiver in terms of receptions too.
Yeah.
So he provides a lot for them. But both these teams are crazy talented. This is I saw Bud Elliott say this was in terms of like blue chip ratio, which he has really pioneered, and really this is like the highest combined blue chip ratio game ever, or championship game ever. So there's going to be a lot of talent on the field.
It makes sense. And especially now with the consolidation of talent to basically 3.5 programs in college football. This is sort of the outgrowth of that. And this is why I think we're going to end up with 8 teams in the playoff here pretty soon.
Yeah.
Because it's just, there's too much consolidation at the top. And I think for the good of the sport, I think we're going to be looking at 8, maybe even as soon as next year. Who you like? I just don't see how Alabama gets stopped. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that Ohio State could draw up on a whiteboard where even if they executed it perfectly, that they could keep Alabama under 40.
If this was, I kind of tend to agree with that. The 9 is, I think 9 is a lot.
I do too.
That when
if it gets on the other side of 10, I'll be on Ohio State.
When it was 7, I felt a lot better about Alabama.
Sure.
They've played some good Alabama, to what I think they have going for them. They've played some really good offenses this year. They've played probably not as talented across the board in terms of raw talent, but Ole Miss is a really good offense. They got a really good quarterback. Florida, really good offense, really good quarterback. Notre Dame, not great, but they have a great offensive line. So they've seen kind of some different things. Georgia, good offensive line, not a great quarterback. I don't know if Ohio State hasn't seen anybody like Alabama. Clemson is not – they're not the Clemson of old offensively. They're not quite as good as they've been. They don't have those big receivers out there that you can't play one-on-one. And I thought Ohio State actually struggled to cover them one-on-one. And those guys aren't as good as Alabama on the outside. But I think Ohio State's going to score. This is not going to be I would be shocked if it was a blowout. I think it would probably be a pretty close game for most of the game and a pretty good game. And but it's hard for me to bet against that Alabama offense with how good they've been. Especially when you see you look at the bowls, the Big Ten's had a pretty good bowl, but the SEC, besides Florida, who just decided they didn't care, I guess they didn't show up. They practiced for 2 days for the bowl game and said whatever.
4 players just were like, nah, man, I ain't going. And 4 starters were just like,
and I think the coach was like, yeah, we kept it simple. It's like, oh, great. And I'm sure Kyle Trask appreciated that. But then, so they got blown out, obviously. And then Auburn is the only other SEC team to lose, and they had a fired head coach. So, SEC's been strong, but so is the Big Ten. So, but I just think out of the way Alabama has played this year, they're going to be tough to beat.
One thing before you make your pick, Sark, he's been doing all the scheming all season to make Alabama the most lethal offense in college football in a long time. Maybe LSU last year was on that same level because they were kind of freakish too. But these college offenses now that are just unbelievable at the top end of the sport. But Sark has been responsible for a lot of that. Yeah. With him going back and forth between Texas and whatever else he's doing. Does that matter here? Do you think that's a factor?
I don't know. They got so many analysts at Alabama that it's not like he's lacking information. He's not lacking for information.
Good point.
I think that probably they've got 45 dudes. They got a guy breaking down each play probably. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't think it would be too big of a factor, but it could. I'm sure that's what they'll say if they lose. That was the big issue, but I don't think it is. I think Saban he's had to deal with this a few times. I think he's learned maybe probably the best way to deal with it. And Sark was that guy he had used before to come in and fill in for a game. So, yeah, I don't think it'll be that big of an issue.
Yeah, I think that I bet they want Kiffin back for the last time that this happened. That's for sure. Who you got? So I think I'm going to guess that you're on Bama and over is my guess.
I liked Bama a lot more at 7. I still probably lean to them at 9. If it gets much higher, yeah, that would be tough. I don't think there's a ton of separation. I just think that Alabama is really talented. Defensively, I think that's the big difference. Alabama, I just trust them. I trust them to be put in really good situations and be able to execute it a little bit more than I trust Ohio State. I think Ohio State's really well coached too, but I've seen their guys, like watching Florida beat Alabama guys in coverage. There's guys there. Florida guys just made unbelievable plays. If you're watching Clemson, there's receivers breaking the defensive backs off, and the defensive backs are slipping and sliding 5 yards away from them when they make their break. That's different. So I think that would be where I give Alabama the edge. I think they're going to be able to beat Ohio State's defensive backs more consistently. But I think it should be a really good game.
It should be a great game. I'm going to stay away on the line. If I'm going to do anything with the line, though, I think with 10 days to get it together, I just trust Alabama to make. So we said we both love Bama, but we don't necessarily love Bama when it outright given 20 to Notre Dame, because Nick Saban dials off the throttle really, really heavily. I do kind of agree with that again this week. I like Alabama first half because they'll take the ball first of all in the kickoff. So if they win the toss, they're going to take the ball, and if Ohio State wins the toss, they might defer, because I think they deferred against Clemson. They did. So it's possible so you get the extra possession that way too. I just feel like that's the better side is Alabama first half. And if you can get that around 4.5 or 5, definitely anything under 6. I feel like that's the play. But this for me is a stay away. I think that both these teams are really good. I still don't trust this Ohio State team because I think a lot of what they did last week was throw it up on. They saw something on film. They're like, oh wait, that guy's supposed to be a first round pick, but he's not very good. And we're just going to throw jump balls in the end zone, and we're going to go off play action and not try and score in 10 and 15, 20-yard chunks. We're going to try and score in 50-yard chunks.
Yeah, and if I was, and they did kind of kill Clemson in explosiveness. In terms of non-explosiveness, the game was actually pretty close statistically.
Sure.
It was the explosive plays. And Alabama, you saw, does not allow a ton of explosive plays. And
Patrick Surtain back there, guys like that can cover and do a
some
better
of those
job.
And a couple of those posts, they were, and Fields I think was a little hurt, but they weren't like perfect throws. They were on the back hip. Yeah. Those are throws guys can make plays on. Ohio State's receivers beat them so bad it didn't matter, and they made some tough. But those were back hip throws that guys can make plays on. I'd lean to Alabama, but this isn't like last year where we both felt pretty good. LSU was going to win by double digits easily, and we said take the 15 and get plus money.
Right.
It's not like that. It should be a good game, but I think I trust Alabama more to get their defense ready than Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm on Bama here. We'll see what happens. If it got to 10.5, I'd take Ohio State. Like I think it's that close, and there's definitely that. I mean, double digits Ohio State. Yeah. I don't know if they should be laying double digits to anybody with the kind of talent that they have on.
No, give me if they gets to 10. I think my pick switches. It's right on the margin now. I liked it a lot more when it first came out when it was 8, and then I think it went down to 7 or 7.5. I liked it a lot more there than I do here at 9. But I still, if I got to make a pick, I'm going Alabama.
We shall see. Plus, we also don't know. We know that there were COVID issues with Ohio State this week. Those were reported. Who they were, we didn't really hear. Apparently, they have enough players to play because they got on playing yesterday. So
that'll be something that'll be interesting to watch. I think if the rumors that I saw were true, the rumors were it was defensive tackles, and those guys basically bossed the run game against Clemson. If those guys aren't there, then you got to feel pretty
good. Najee Harris is going to have a field day.
You got to feel pretty good about Alabama if those guys aren't there. If they're there, then I think we're kind of where we are at right now. So that might be something to watch. And then if you want to wait to bet in game, I think you just bet basically who's running the ball better. If
Ohio State gets a stop, how about it
could be field first stop. Yeah, first stop. But I think if you kind of want to see is Alabama able to run the ball, both these teams use the run to set everything else up. So if whoever's able to run the ball better, I think as a team's going to end up winning. So if Ohio State comes out early and is just able to run the ball, then I think that bodes pretty well for them offensively. So if you're getting some, plus numbers there, it might be worth the look. So,
and there have been games Alabama this year has given up the run. There are games where you've seen them have some vulnerability in the run game. Not for long. They tend to adjust and figure it out.
And they don't give up a lot of explosive. They're not. Alabama's not unbelievable on defense this year like they've been in the past. They're like high 20s, 30s, and success rate and things like that. But they don't give up explosives. So they're kind of a bend, don't break, make you work down the field. And then both these teams are really high up in turnover margin. So they turn you over. I think that's another thing to watch. I think Ohio State's had some turnover luck. They've got 11 fumbles in 7 games. They've recovered 11 fumbles in 7 games. Or I don't even think they had a fumble last game. So 11 in their first 6.
Wow.
So they have a turnover margin of 9 through 7 games. I think Alabama's at they're at 11. So 11 through 12 games or 13 games. So
if you're not as familiar with fumble luck, basically every 50% of the balls that hit the carpet should get turned over, like exactly 50. So, okay, cool. All right, sir. This was fun. Maybe we'll come back and do the Super Bowl.
All right.
Let's add on. We'll have some conference championship games or some Super Bowl or stuff like that. As we are taping this as Phillip Rivers is trying to drive down the field and beat the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo with down 3. Has Phillip Rivers ever had a lead in a fourth quarter drive?
I was going to say, until you said Buffalo Bills, this could have been any time in the last 20 years. That added no context to when this was.
Poor Phillip Rivers. All right, we're done. Thanks for watching, and good luck wagering, possibly in-game wagering on this game. I think that might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think so.